Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's brief ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, in both videos today, we're starting over in Europe, and we're paying close attention to this deep low that's out over the Black Sea. It's going to move very slowly toward the east and then curl into the southern Russian wheat belt. And as it does so, we're going to see some stronger winds on the northern side of this, and over the next 10 days, we're expecting some pretty wet conditions in and throughout parts of Ukraine and this part of Russia. So you can see much above average precipitation in those areas. Now, just after seeing a lot of the video footage this past weekend of what's going on in Ukraine and Russia, I did take note that there was quite a bit of mud. And as you can see here, the percent of soil moisture as measured by the WMO is quite high across a large section of Ukraine, Moldova, and also Belarus. And we can also see it here by looking at the CPC data. Very similar story, with only a very narrow quadrant right here in this part of the country of Ukraine where there's some drier soils. Now, thinking about that, the overall pattern across the whole of North America is quite connected right now. And what's really shifted is the Pacific jet stream pattern. We're actually seeing this huge plume of moisture that's been pushed here finally into the Pacific Northwest, breaking down that very large ridge that had been in place throughout much of January and February across much of the West. So what's going to happen here is we're going to see some changes in this map. Now, this was the February precipitation ranks by climate district. Your eyes drawn to how dry things are in the Northwest, in the western part of the United States. This big chunk of drier conditions here in parts of the western Corn Belt, but the very wet corridor that stretches from the mid-south to the eastern Corn Belt into parts of New England. We've been dry along the Gulf Coast as well. We'll have some changes for these areas, and that's going to be important to see throughout the month of March because we've got some soil moisture issues in the midsection of the country. We've covered these quite a bit as of late. Now, these only become an issue if they're still there once we get fully into planting and beyond. So we need to watch these changes very carefully over the coming weeks and months. What's shifted is this, and this is that global picture I was kind of bringing you up to speed on. We now have a very long, zonal, and extended jet coming across the Pacific. It was born out of keeping the MJO here for a while in phases 3 and 4, and that's what's helped get us here. Now, that MJO is collapsing back into null space. A week ago, models were suggesting that it was going to come out of phase 3 into 4 and 5, but some new evidence now suggests that we're going to be seeing some weaker action in the trade winds that aren't going to give us a real strong area of rising motion. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Our La Nina still is here. It's fading. It's continuing to fade, but we did get a big push of trade winds in this area. And what's happening right now is, generally speaking, there's some westerly component to the wind here, giving our best rising motion in this area. You can see that when we look here. See these red colors? That would represent where the winds are either slow, coming out of the east, or have come out of the west. And here's our stronger trade winds. Now, for the next 10 or so days, it's going to give us a pretty strong signal for the MJO to be somewhere between phases 4, 5, and 6, but nowhere nearly as strongly as forecast by some other metrics. Now, what does all this mean? I'm looking for anything that's going to continue to support this. And what I don't want to see is I don't want to see the MJO break through and come out into the Pacific. That will disrupt this flow. This is what's helped break down the pattern across the Pacific Northwest. So I look at all of that and say, well, going out there from March 10th to March 10th to April 10th, we do see better precipitation for the Pacific Northwest. Unfortunately, this area is staying over quite wet throughout the month of March into early April. And a lot of that's because the storm track keeps dipping here and then running up in this area because the troughs stay anchored somewhere over the Hudson Bay, not farther back to the west. So I do believe the models are too dry. They're giving you too dry of a picture here. I see better moisture come into these areas, and they're probably too dry for Texas as well. We're going to bring more of that moisture back farther to the west than suggested by the longer range runs. And one of the reasons why I'm saying that is because even as far out as day 10, see the depth of the troughs the models are producing here? This would be better at drawing in moisture farther to the west and giving us better chances, unfortunately, for storms, but for rain into this area as well. So that's kind of the bigger picture, that thing I'm seeing out through the next few weeks here. Let's now dig into some of the details of the near term. I like to do that by doing the multi-model ensemble here. The multi-model approach. So GFS on the left, European on the right. Now, big picture. For the next couple of days, atmospheric river pours the moisture into the Pacific Northwest. Little clipper will sneak through like this. We're going to watch that. But much of the rest of the country is going to be dry. The deeper trough finally builds into the west, ejects the first wave here and a second wave there. That'll be this weekend. Ready? So playing from Monday into Tuesday, See the clipper? See the moisture stream still coming into the west? From there, the deeper trough develops over the Great Basin. This is by Friday, and we've now opened up the Gulf of Mexico. Good news is we're bringing snow into this area. I'll show you how much in just a few moments. Southern Alberta and Saskatchewan need it. So does Montana. From here, though, what we get is our first system that comes out of here and moves quickly in this direction. Severe storms to the south. There will likely be overrunning and ice into this area and snow on the backside right where we need it. It's in both models. That's through 6 p.m. on Saturday. The second wave comes out here Sunday night into Monday. Now, the models are different in the timing. The GFS quicker, as it normally is, the European slower. But this would mean a multi-day possibility here of having strong to severe storms this weekend over the south. Heavy rains in the mid-south, snow on the backside of this, and unfortunately some ice out ahead of it. But that's two systems back to back right there. And then the models next week want to leave a frontal boundary sitting here. The European's a little bit slower with it. The GFS is more amplified and quite a bit wetter, but we need to watch that as well as it moves over parts of the southeast. We stitch it all together. This is what the next, we'll call this the next 7 or 8 days looks like from the European. So again, the clipper track is there. The original moisture plume coming into the northwest. The deeper trough digs, system 1, system 2, heavy rains through here. Possibility picking easily up 2 to 3 inches of rain. And then here on the backside, some snow. Now, before we take a look at that snow, I would like to just give you the differences in the models. If you want to pause the video and take a closer look, these colors are where the GFS is wetter. This is where the European is wetter. So you can see there are some model differences in the timing, especially around the Great Lakes in the Midwest. We need to take note of that. But it's that severe weather that I'm starting to get concerned about. So take a look at this thunderstorm environment metric that we produced, or Andrew Pritchard, my colleague, produced here. And what we see is on Friday night, we could see a narrow corridor of strong to severe storms here that opens up much wider on Saturday afternoon and evening. So this whole area needs to be on the lookout Saturday evening based on the current timing of the models. We then get into the day here on Sunday, and that opens up farther into the eastern Corn Belt. So this is a multi-day possibility of having some strong to severe storms in this region. Now after that, that severe weather threat slides farther to the south on Monday, but we just got to keep an eye out later this weekend to see how that all changes. On the snow side of this, we're going to be bringing snow to some places that need it, like right into this area. If you look at this map, this shows percent of normal snowfall through the season. And what we end up getting out of this next couple of systems looks like this. Clipper track, snows in the Great Basin, in the Four Corner states, strong onshore flow coming to the Cascades before it all starts. Then the waves eject, and you see that that corridor into there gets quite a bit of snow. How much? Well, this is the probability of getting at least 3 inches through the next 10 days. Gets us out to March the 10th. And speaking of March 10th and beyond, we see that that deeper trough sticks around into that second full week of March and all the way out there, to mid-March. And that's going to keep this area quite active with wet weather. Now, unfortunately, this is an area that doesn't need any more wet weather. It's been extremely wet as of late. Some places near having a top 5 wettest February on record. But this is what the European model says, and the GFS is following it in suit. So there's a lot of model agreement. What I'm getting concerned about when we look out here to week 2 and week 3 is that there's some good evidence. This is some great data that comes from Northern Illinois University that shows that the CFSV2 is staying aggressive with severe threat from Texas into the lower Mississippi River Valley. That again would be week 2. And then week 3, we still see that. I just want to make a point here that this is very consistent historically. There's been some great research done by the Storm Prediction Center showing that this is an area in March with a fading La Nina that has increased risk of severe storms. I just want to point that out to you. From here, let's talk temperatures, because we're going to see some major changes to this map. This is temperature ranks up to this point in February, looking at February data. And where are we going? Well, we've already seen the mild day today on Monday, but watch this. Tuesday to Wednesday, 60s and 70s, maybe cracking 80 in Kansas and Nebraska, up in the mid-70s. But this is all going to change late in the week. Clipper rolls through, cooling things down across the northern tier of the United States. The west has the trough dig in on Friday. The trough ejects on Saturday, opens up a big warm sector for the severe storms, but brings in the colder air behind it. And there it is on Sunday. So day 5 through 10 looks something a bit like this. That's when that deeper trough is in place, the ridges over the southeast. and it goes just like that. That's been well forecast by the models, and this would be day 10 through 15. We're looking at some cold air kind of anchored around the larger trough over the Hudson Bay, bringing the cold air through the Canadian prairie into the northern plains of the United States. So pretty wild ride on temperatures. Here's the last bit on this. Polar vortex today, very strong, centered over the Arctic. But there's some evidence that it's going to go from that peak in its strength and drop off quickly. Some of the models are suggesting that, watch this, there's the polar vortex. By even the time we get to this weekend, it may split into two pieces. And where they go once we get out there into that second week of March is still a bit up in the air. There's a big upper stratospheric ridge pushing in here. We call that a stratospheric warming event. It looks like it's going to push the main branch of the polar vortex over Siberia. Does it end up back over the U.S. by the end of March? We just need to ask that question to be on the lookout for it. So I'll watch it for you. I'll report back to you again on Thursday. Thanks.